Right. Are you there, Ajit?
Yeah,
Can you hear me loud and clear?
loud and clear.
So whereabouts are you this afternoon?
Ooh, in sunny England.
Sunny. There's a first. Write this date down. Ajit, it's absolutely wonderful and a great pleasure and an honor to have you here with me today on this amazing series called The Unstoppable Entrepreneur's Secrets. And you're one of the few people that I know from childhood days, shall I say, who have absolutely said, there's a guy whose background I know, upbringing I know, right the way through your ups and downs, and the kind of successes you have are absolutely amazing. And I'll let you tell the story. But I'm so honored to have you on this call. So let's go with it. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So just to kick off a little bit lightly, Ajit, tell us a little bit about where you were born and when did you first recall that you had some entrepreneurial spirit in you.
Ooh. I can recall when I was born that the year, but I'm not sure I can recall when I thought I was an entrepreneur. I don't think that was a realization until perhaps many years after being an entrepreneur. But let's start with where I was born. I was born in Kenya, Kisumu, a little town called Kisumu I was going to say coastal town, but it's a little town that
Victoria.
is on the shores of Lake Victoria. I was born in 1960, and I think maybe there is a point in time when I thought I had an entrepreneurial gene, or what I would call a business gene rather than entrepreneurial, was when I was about 12 years old and in a school. And I remember going to one of the school fetes and setting up a little, I won't even call it a stall. I can't even recall how much money I had, but I had a few cents and I used that to set up a little game of marbles, asking people to roll the marbles in from a particular distance into a glass of water. And I kind of realized that, I remember some comments I had from people, and they said, "Oh man, this is very not entrepreneurial." It was said in Gujarati, something along the line of, you are likely to be a successful businessman with a sort of a mind like that. So that's my earliest memories of or realization of maybe that I am an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. I remember those days as well when I was 12 and doing the same marbles and the gilli dandas and the competitions, how to make money by making any toy. But those were the creative days. And a lot of people say that there is a certain thing in Kisumu water where there's a lot of entrepreneurs being born. What do you think it is? What's that secret? What's that magic?
Well, I don't know. I keep, so many people have said that to me, but there is something, isn't it? Because there are a lot of entrepreneurs have come out of Kisumu over the years. Maybe it's in the air. Maybe it's the fact that we were born near the equator, and there is a particular part of the cosmos that rules our activities. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I have a view on it that a lot of it's to do with the way it was a small society, small community. There was no barriers. Everyone was virtually equal. There was no black, white, English, Muslim sort of thing. Everyone learned how to barter and trade with each other because you had to, otherwise you wouldn't survive in a small place like that. So it kind of like was in the DNA from birth. I guess. But anyway, that's my theory, or one of my theories. But one of my theories. But tell me, so from 12, then similar to myself as well, from 12, you obviously left the country, and then tell us what happened afterwards
No,
during your
this
school and
no,
university and things like that.
no, that time was in India. What I described, because from the age of 5, I had spent some time in India.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
My dad had sent mom and all the siblings off to India. So this was around when I was in India, and then at the age of 13, I came back to Kisumu, and I guess that's when we met.
That's right. That's right.
At the age of around 13, around 1973, and I sort of, if I recall correctly, you left Kisumu around 1975, I think.
Yeah, towards the end of 75. That's right. That's right.
End of 75, yeah.
Bit of an abrupt leaving, but such was life.
Yeah, so no, I was in Kisumu from that age till the age of 18. Oh, actually, not quite. At the age of 16, I went off to Nairobi,
Right.
my A levels. Um, I did those in Nairobi, and then in 1978, I came into England to do my pharmacy. So, qualified as a pharmacist in 1981.
Right.
Um, I did my what we call pre-registration training as a pharmacist for a year with another entrepreneur from Kisumu,
Right.
and then set up my first business 2 months after qualifying. I say I set up. I actually joined some family in running a business, which relationship lasted all but a year. Um, After which I kind of decided to veer off and did a lot of entrepreneurial things. So 1982 I qualified, started a chain of pharmacies with some cousins. 83 I was setting up and running Sunbed Hire Company.
Right.
1983 I set up a printing business. 1984 I thought of exiting and started my plans to develop the modern day equivalence of a gym, which was quite a unique encounter and a proposition. 1984, I set up my pharmacy business. 86, I set up a printing, photography, and another printing business.
Right.
1987, I set up a securities business. And 1989, I set up Gold Shield, which is where as you probably know, I spent a number of years, in turning that business into a public entity. Until 2007, when I left Gold Shield and set up what I currently run, the Sanda Group of businesses. Yeah, so that's kind of my journey.
Yeah.
So
Very
short.
interesting. In that journey, as most entrepreneurs have, everyone has their successes and everyone has their fair share of failures, or as I call wisdoms, or stepping stones that you jump over. What's your biggest lessons in certain situations? And the two in particular are doing business with friends or family, as it may, and the other one is when you go really large and you took a company public, the Gold Shields company, there must be some mistakes and lessons. So I want to try and give some of the readers a feel for, as an expert in your field, what do you think those key things are that you learn through that wisdom in those mistakes?
Phew, wisdom. Do I have wisdom? I don't think so.
Yes, wisdom, you have plenty of that, sir.
I think that amongst many lessons, I think the most important lesson to be an entrepreneur is that I think one of the most difficult, a true entrepreneur always is full of ideas. That's my belief. True entrepreneurs always got ideas about doing this and doing that, and various. And I remember having those, in the early days, I had loads and loads and loads and loads of ideas, and every day there was a new idea.
Absolutely.
And a friend of mine who is a dear friend of mine who's an accountant of mine as well used to say to me, Ajit, you have such great ideas. Just work on one and make it happen. So I think one of the dangers being an entrepreneur is that you do too many things, chase too many rabbits, and catch none. And that was my first. So whilst I had good successes, relative successes in all my ventures, I hadn't actually made a sustainable and long-term success of any other than my pharmacy. Um, and so I think the lesson from that was that you needed, if you really wanted to build a business, a successful business, then you needed to focus, stop chasing too many rabbits, and on focus on a handful of things to do and do it well. So if there was any lesson that and it to be given to any budding entrepreneurs is to watch out for that, is to pick something and just focus and make it happen, which is what I did in Goldshield. So in 1989, I kind of made a decision that I'm going to stop all my ventures and just go out and focus on one, and that actually paid. The recent year correlation to that is that in the recent years I've been sort of tending to do again lots of things and not concentrating on any, and I found the same sort of problems and issues, and hence I'm in the process of rationalizing some of the things that I currently do. So one of the most important lessons with people is that if you want to be an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur, just learn to focus on one idea and making it work.
Yeah, it's absolutely a great tip because a lot of people, as you say, they get more operational and tactical rather than strategic and focusing with all the energy on one side. And I have a quote I usually say that it's like when you got a hammer and a nail, and if you want to get all the energy on the head of the nail, you most probably get a chance of getting it through the wall or the wood. But if you use a piece of shoe and various other things, you're not going to do that. So you need that focused energy in one place. So that's a great tip. And give me. You have an amazing story there. Give me one of your biggest success stories or success deals that you did, and a great lesson you learned from it. And what was that lesson in the big deal or the big success that you might have had? It could be in any environment.
I'm not sure what you mean when you say big deal
So
or
big deal. Like for me, knowing you, the taking Sanda from where it was to a public listed company is probably
no,
one of the most.
no, that's Gold Shield, not Sanda, but
Yeah, Gold Shield. Sorry, Gold Shields. So there must be a success, a deal situation, or a situation where your input and your strengths came into play to then uh, win that thing around as a success. There must have been a turning point of what you did when you intervened.
I think one of the I'm not sure whether this is what you wanted to hear, but one of first of all, there is no single thing that was the driving force behind the success. But if I had to put amongst many things, if I had to put something in, let's say, top three bits that made the success so possible was the ability to build a team. Because no matter what you are doing, success isn't possible unless you have a good team with you. And I guess my ability to pull together a bunch of people, give them a direction, and be able to work with them in a sort of coherent manner to achieve your sort of goals was one of the key drivers of our success. And in many respects, I was when that team stopped to function for whatever reason, is when we lost the chance to continue with the ability to grow Goldshell into even a mega product. but so I think having a right team, having a good bunch of people, in your ability to build a team, I think is a very critical element in success. I think any entrepreneur wanting to build a business needs to bear that in mind, that nothing can be done without the help of a handful of people around you who are dedicated, who are driven, and are working towards one single goal.
Yeah.
I think then the second thing, and like I said, it's not in particular order, is the ability to be fair and equitable in any dealings, to be able to build up an organization uh, and working with all employees, but also external people, business partners. The key to success there is to do everything on the basis of a win-win. So never look for something so that it's only one-sided. Make sure that any deals you are doing, you have carefully considered the other sides. So in terms of one of the turning points of the business in its early stage when it was going bankrupt or almost went bankrupt was my ability to do a deal with Glaxo. And I did a deal with Glaxo to buy one of their old products. And that was a deal that I did against all odds. For a man with no money to be able to make a deal with Glaxo and buy one of the products was done because there was a very good win-win formula in there that answered what Glaxo needed, and it wasn't necessarily money that they wanted. They wanted to be sure that the product that they were selling, which had a pedigree, that was going to end up in the hands of somebody who was going to care for it, look after it. So whilst money was an important part, I was able to structure a deal because I was able to make any sort of a transaction more valuable by ensuring that their needs were met, which were more than financial needs. So learning the ability to make sure that, or having the ability to make sure that whatever you're doing in any sort of a dealings, you are sort of concluding that, it's all about win-win. It's not about win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And your third one? Your third one?
The third one is your people skills. I think, in any organization that's
So yeah, your teamwork skills, yes.
so in people skills. So one is when I say the first one is ability to build a team.
Yeah. Yeah.
The third one is actually slightly different. It's ability to understand. And when I was talking about team, I'm talking about the top level team.
Yeah.
But when I'm talking about employees and people, I'm talking about people at all levels, whether they work for you or directly or indirectly. Your ability to communicate with them, to be able to understand them, motivate them, drive them, set the right goals for them, give them direction, communicating your vision with them, all of those factors then makes it sort of either you are going to succeed or not going to succeed. Because when you're mobilizing a large organization, and I had to learn something very fast, and I call this as a factor of 10. That when I first started Gold Shield, there was like two of us. So the way we managed that business was fundamentally different. A few years later, about 3 years later, we had about 50 people. So the way we had to manage the business with 50 was fundamentally different to when it was when we were doing it with 3. And a few years later, we had about 1,000 employees. And to manage 1,000 employees was a completely different sort of game than it was managing 1 or 20 people or 30 people. So your ability to, if you want to grow a business, the ability to have people skills and recognizing that different stages of the business growth requires a different type of management.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And the whole thing about trust and giving people a lot of freedom and giving them the direction, vision, I fully agree with. So in those are very good tips there as well for successes. In terms of failures, why do you think a lot of entrepreneurs, and if you look at the statistics, it's between 90 and 95% of most entrepreneurs fail in their first 3 years? What do you think is your reason, the key? We've covered the focus bit, we've covered the people, we've covered the teamwork stuff. What else do you think is a key ingredient? Why do you think entrepreneurs fail?
I think it's perhaps the one of the things is I think the entrepreneurs, um, I think that there are multiple reasons why they tend to fail.
Yeah.
Uh, but if I was to put down three things that I think help entrepreneurs either succeed or fail are their financial nuances. Do they understand finances properly? And so many people have great ideas, but they don't have the true understanding of what it takes. And I only relate it in this sense that every successful business is a product, and every product requires a customer, and every customer needs to be served properly, and it needs to be all done at a cost which makes it financial sense. So one of the reasons why I think companies or organizations or entrepreneurs fail is that they have great ideas. They have great ideas about making a product or selling a product or whatever. However, they are not financially viable, or they have not figured out how to make them financially viable, and hence some of them really, really fail. Second reason I think that entrepreneurs fail, and I'm not putting them in any particular order, is
No, that's
because
fine.
entrepreneurs tend to start out singularly, in other words, single person, and they can make a success at a singular level, so they might be able to make a product, sell enough of that by themselves, but they fail in this factor of 10 that I was describing. They fail to take the leap from doing things themselves to be able to get other people to do it for them. And so they tend to fail. So this is, I think, a second reason why there are a lot of failures at entrepreneurial levels. And a third level of failures that I observe and I believe is a cause, and that's a cause for even all the organizations, that they have great ideas, but great ideas in themselves don't make money. What makes money is how you implement those ideas, again, financially, but also non-financially. How do you implement? So how do you translate a vision? A lot of entrepreneurs have a good vision, but it's like an architect. You might see an image of a building, but if you can't draw it and you can't mobilize a team of builders and co-workers to mobilize and to implement the plan of the building that the way you visualize it, then it's not going to come alive. So I think one of the reasons that entrepreneurs, and there are a lot of failures in here, is that they have great visions that they're never able to articulate to a large section of their team who would actually implement it. So in a first, if I was to go in an order, I think one of the first set of failures is because they have great ideas, they don't know how to implement them. Secondly, they have great ideas, they know how to implement them, but they don't know how to implement them properly financially. And third thing is that they might know how to implement them financially, but when the growth comes, they are not able to manage the whole growth from the factor of 10, which is, I can do it myself. Some people out of say 100 entrepreneurs, maybe 10% of them then are able to progress from the ability to do it themselves to be able to have a team of 10 or 20 people to do it for them. But when that next stage comes, when they have to get these 10 or 20 people to do exactly what they had done, which is delegate one step down, which is another factor of 10, that is when a vast majority of them fail. And I think you get a success of maybe 1%.
That's
And
right.
then the rest becomes even lesser, another factor of 10, and then you find that sort of failure. So these are what I believe are the contributing factors of why entrepreneurs don't succeed.
No, you're absolutely right. There's some very good, important lessons there for people there. In terms of lessons as well, what would be your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those, and I do a lot of stuff with universities and things in education section. So what would be your advice to these people to say, if you're aspiring to be an entrepreneur, these are some of the key things that you really need to focus on at the early stage. Because later on, as you've just said, everything goes tenfold, 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 and it just becomes like a tsunami where less than 1% survive the tsunami. Yeah. So, what would be that key ingredient that you would advice to those aspiring new startup types of entrepreneurs?
But one of the things is learn how to build a team of people who can do things you can't do. Learn to delegate that very quickly, very earlier on. So nothing is doable unless you have a team of people, and each team member has different expertise to bring to the table. So you got, and that's got to be constantly evaluated against the motivations of a team member. So I think at an early stage, one of the things that I would advise people to do is, either you learn to do everything yourselves, which for most that's very difficult because they have one area of specialty. But a business is only successful if you have multiple disciplines that are working in tandem. So, whether it's from finance to, operations to marketing and sales to product development, there are a lot of disciplines. So if you want to be successful, longer term, make sure you are addressing and, building the right team structure that allows for you to compensate for the weaknesses that you will have in your own self.
You're absolutely right. Richard Branson is a classic. He says you cannot be in the job, you have to be on the job. Because running 400 companies, if you are in the job and doing things hands-on, forget it, you're going to drown very fast, and you can't do it. So you
I think
absolutely
for most entrepreneurs, they can't start with that idea because they start small, but they have got to be able to adapt very quickly when the relative success comes.
Yeah,
So,
delegation is difficult, as you say. Delegation is very difficult because a lot of people think that they can do everything and they can scale, and soon they run down, run out, burn out, and all these things that happen, right?
yeah, I think some people think that they can do it, others just don't trust.
This is the
So
biggest.
everybody does it for a completely different set of reasons. But what is important is that you can't be successful unless and until you build a team. Unless you want to be just a one-man entrepreneur, in which case it's fine.
Yeah. How often do you, just to take it off, we've covered a lot on the teamwork, the people, the skills. How often do you now review your business plan? So you set your business plan, but how often do you review it with your core team, I guess?
I mean, I have a philosophy which is continuous
Absolutely.
evaluation.
Bravo. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not, it shouldn't be time driven. It should be absolutely on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Well, on a regular basis, yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. How much time do you spend on, so you spend a lot of time on people, team building, and things like that, but on the actual branding and marketing of your company, you personally, how much time do you spend on it?
I spend a lot of my time because all my business philosophies are based around that I'm only interested in marketing because I believe in marketing leverage. I have an entrepreneurial program that I have run. I can't share it with you here online, but at another time that I can share, which is basically what I call my CFV, is a business development thing. And I believe in marketing leverage. So I believe that people should spend most of the time on marketing, but they should also spend a lot of time on financial controls. Because without financial controls and understanding the impact of marketing and measuring it,
Sure.
you are likely to fail. So that's where I spend a lot of my time.
Yeah, that's why I asked because a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's my hobby horse really. A lot of entrepreneurs, because they are not good at branding, marketing, and financials, they think because they've delegated it to somebody else, it's fine and taken care of. When my personal view, if the leader at the top is not really involved in those three areas, then those are the vulnerable points or the breaking points of an organization. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think branding and branding. I think is important because that is setting the tone and value for what you're doing. And if and when I say branding in more ways than one, I'm not just talking about the pretty bits of branding.
No,
I think
absolutely
what your product stands for, what it should deliver, all those aspects, and they are very key. Every entrepreneur should be spending time on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you want brand advocacy to low level of just brand loyalty or awareness. So that whole stack from top to bottom needs to be understood by the leader.
Yeah.
And what do you think? in terms of then delegating it? How do you set the goals to your people with timescales to make sure these bits are done according to your goals and your timescales? How do you go about setting that?
Yeah, I think there, before I, sort of forget, I think it's important to understand something very critically. There is a difference between an entrepreneur, in my mind, and a CEO.
Right. Absolutely.
So an entrepreneur could just provide the ideas and a CEO could implement. But if most entrepreneurs end up being both.
Yes.
So
Right.
if you are going to be both, then one of the things that I very strongly advise entrepreneurs is to get to know your business inside out. This is my success.
Absolutely.
So even if it means how the photocopy is run, I want to know. Only because I want to make sure that the people in charge are running it properly. Because one of the greatest dangers when you're building a team in an entrepreneurial environment, you find team members who are not competent. Now, the only way you can assess their competency is by being able to assess what you want to assess in the first place. Because if you don't know what you're looking for in terms of output from people, then there is no way you'll be able to measure that they are producing the output. So, if you talk about success and measures, then one of the things that an entrepreneur needs to do is to understand what impacts their business.
Yeah, I mean, I've got that. So whilst we're on success, measure, and performance, let's cover that now. So one of the things in terms of performance, which is what you were saying here and touching on. So I have that same view. If the entrepreneur or the CEO does not know much about the business, or it's not a passion of his, then he would not know how to measure it, and the chances of failure is much higher than success. That's for sure. But how do you go about doing certain measures? How do you measure these goals and performance? That's what I want to get to know. As a tip.
There's no easy way. I mean, my fundamental philosophy is this: what gets measured gets done.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it's a dream.
So if you want to get something done, figure out how to measure it. And this is another area I believe that entrepreneurs fail,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that they don't know how to measure
Accountability. Yeah.
accountability. So whatever it is, it's simple as that. If you want to measure that you are going to be, your people should be working exactly 10 hours a day, then you've got to figure out how you're going to measure it. Because and make it visible. If you can't measure and be visible, then there is no way in trying to enforce something like that, because you just won't know whether it's happening or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of performance measurement, have you got certain tools, certain tips, certain things secrets, some special ways of how you measure performance? Because it's quite tricky to measure performance from high up. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a very simple philosophy. I try and not make it too complicated, although invariably ends up being a little complicated. But the simplest measurement system for everybody is, agree what needs to be done. First of all, in order for any performance, these are the basics. Agree what needs to be done.
Yep.
Agree how both the people in this mix understand how one will measure what is being done, and to know whether it's being done. In other words, if I'm measuring somebody's performance, I need to make sure they understand that I'm measuring X, and that I set the matrix of what X actually means and how it will be measured is both agreed, is made visible to both people in a timely manner. And I think if you follow that basics, then performance measure becomes very easy and very simple to manage, because both parties know exactly what's expected, how it's being measured, and both parties will be able to tell the outcome. So the discussion is not around whether, but the discussion is about what. So in other words, what I'm saying is that if you agreed what the performance measures are, and if you agreed what the performance is and how it's going to be measured, and if you are measuring it and both the parties agree to that measurement formula, then the only discussion in a performance is about actually did you or did you not. But even that's very simple, because both can see whether you did or didn't, because the measures are very clear. So the only discussion is actually what do we do now.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, because it's two-way communication. That's kind of like a legal bond formally that I will do X by this time. And that's a simple process. But I was looking at KPIs and complicated ways. You don't implement these complicated matrices and scoring and all that in your organization.
No, I think there is a room for those. And at Gold Shield, I did try to implement those because it was necessary because the size of organization was large. So I think again, it's back to the same thing. It depends on the size of the organization. So for a small business,
Yeah.
which currently I am, with my new setup, it's relatively small, then it's easy to do it the way I just said. But when it's bigger and you are getting all your managers to set what they call as KPIs, the difficulty is that the uniformity tends to miss. So how do you establish uniformity? And that's where you end up creating some mechanical ways of measuring and probably end up making a mess.
Oh, you're absolutely right. What's your view? It's on outsourcing. How much of your work do you outsource to not your core team but outside? I know you have
Uh,
information in
Quite a
India.
lot.
That's
Quite a
interesting.
lot. One of the reasons why Gold Shield we were successful, again, it goes back to the same principle that I just talked about. That you really need to decide what your competencies are as an individual, and based on that, make sure that you appoint the right team members to balance where your weaknesses are. In a similar manner, I think in an organization, every organization should decide what their core competencies that they want to develop, and then look for outsourcing anything else that's critical to their organization. Everything is critical, obviously, but if it's not a core competency in which you want to spend time in developing, then you should outsource it. And I think one of the reasons why Gold Shield was very successful was that I was able to outsource a lot of my functions. In those days, I remember, when I first started in 1989 and I was outsourcing my manufacturing in pharmaceutical industry, people were saying I'm mad. You can't run a pharmaceutical business without having manufacturing, and I said yes, we can, and we did. So yeah, I'm a proponent of outsourcing, but only from the point of view, first be clear about what organizational competencies you want and which ones you want to develop internally, and the ones that you don't want to and are low priority, outsource them.
Yeah, I have a matrix over here which I use a lot for what to outsource and what to insource in your core team. And basically, I say to my guys here, protect your brand, protect your money and the financial accountability stuff, and your connections with the clients. The rest can virtually much be looked at with a microscope, whether it can be outsourced or not.
But even financing, actually not financing, but actually accounting
Your
process,
money, your
yeah,
money.
I outsource them.
Yeah, but what I mean is you must know and have some accountability accounting in-house to even manage the outsource. So of course someone does the number crunching and the paper filing and all that. But the money, the financial from top down, what's come in, what's gone out, that handle of it needs to be in the house. The money side. I'm a firm believer that money side needs to be in house. And then yes, of course the paper cutting side and the operational BPOing work can be done outside.
Yeah, correct.
So you need to have a high level. Um, Very interesting. Give me your view on talking about outsourcing, which is, you say you went in 1989, was it right? 1989.
1989 when I started Gold Shield, yeah, I was
Right.
out.
Because I remember in 80s, yeah, it was about 89, 90 when I was in Siemens. I then started doing the outsourcing business over there in the early days with various governments, with PPP, PFI, and in those days people were saying, "What the hell is doing that? Why do you outsource government?" But now it's a norm. It's a norm. So I'm a big supporter of it. But what do you think now, going forward, what the next 5, 10 years will look like with the whole social media, internet becoming so three-dimensional? What do you think is the next big wave for organizations to grasp hold of pretty fast?
Ah,
And you can give your examples, some of the stuff you're doing or learning about.
I think that the whole interaction bit with the clients of the future, the it is going to change, and I think all I can say is that the way it's going to change is very unpredictable, but it is going to be fairly digital. So what I mean by that is, people now, if you just think about social interactions, i.e., social media, has become the second most powerful and used interaction mechanism to face. So I think social media is going to change a lot of things. It's already doing it.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is how it will shape the developing countries. That's changing quite rapidly as well. Especially in my new business, which I'm just getting ready to launch. I believe that the social interactions, the way they are being done now, and what will happen, will completely change the world. From everything from currencies, digital currencies in use, like the bitcoins, to how you socialize, how you make purchasing decisions, to how you make customer services, how you report. The whole thing is going to be changing, and I don't think it's going to settle down into one particular way or not, because every day we are seeing new things that are coming up, and people are finding new ways of interacting. However, on the flip side, I think security, confidentiality, privacy, all those things are going to be, are becoming more and more prominent in this whole digital world, so to speak. So I don't know. The only thing I know is that people are going to interact fundamentally differently to the way they do now. I think they're going to do it more with people being on the go, i.e., mobile devices. That's already happening. Computers are going to die. Mobile devices are going to take over. And I really don't know, but it's a big, fantastically exciting time, and the number of consumers opening up. And actually, there has never been a better time than now for entrepreneurs.
You're absolutely right.
How much the entrepreneurs can do now that they couldn't do before, it's just amazing.
Yes, because the access to everything from information to clients can be all done through your mobile phone.
Yeah.
That's the biggest advantage. And if you remember, I used to be in Sun Microsystems as a very big visionary there. About 14 years ago, I was looking at my slides from those days. Smartphones didn't exist, uh, Facebook didn't exist, LinkedIn, I think, had just started 13 years ago, etc., etc. And we were talking about in those days, we didn't call it smartphones. We just released Java and we called it Java phones and thin clients, and we didn't call it the cloud. We called it server farms, and we didn't call it bandwidth. We called it fat pipes. And we were talking that as a vision, and people were thinking, "What's this, cuckoo land?" And now our ex VP, head of Google, is making this whole vision happen, and it's amazing. And as you said, change is on a daily basis. It's so rapid. It is so, uh, if you don't adopt to change, I think entrepreneurs will not survive. They have to be constantly changing, which brings me on to the next question. What's your view, and how do you do this? How do you invent and re-innovate ideas inside your company to adopt to clients' needs, problems, and all this change? How do you do that in your organization?
Ooh, difficult question. I don't.
Because if you don't
I've been the driver of that mostly, because I think one of the things that is a great danger for every organization is that you become victims to your own successes. So the companies that are failing have the most innovative areas. The companies that are successful have the least innovation going on. And it is partly because when you have a level of success, then innovation is not at the forefront of minds. It's more about protection and carrying on with what you're doing. and often that makes innovation, by the time it comes, is too late because you already, so innovation has to be done at the time you are successful, not at the time when you're failing. And most organizations, one of the most difficult things is to actually innovate at the height of your success.
Yeah, because that's when everyone wants to have a pop at you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And you are busy protecting what you got rather than innovating.
exactly. You've got to constantly innovate, and we've seen so many big companies fall by the wayside when they've been right at the top number one positions, and they go by the wayside because they stopped innovation.
Yeah, and
Um,
you've got to have disruption. You've got to
Absolutely,
have disrupting sort of strategies to disrupt your own businesses.
all the time, constantly,
If the
constantly.
business can't figure out how to disrupt their own business, then you are already staring at death.
Yeah, exactly. You die. Very interesting. Tell me a little bit about some inspirational people that you say, these were my inspiration role models, because everyone needs a mentor, coach, inspirational figurehead or figureheads. Who are these for you particularly, and why and why?
You're gonna find this very strange. But I
No,
actually don't believe I have a inspirational leader than one that I follow blindly.
so it won't be one, yes. So that's why I said it could be more than one, yeah.
Yeah.
That you
So
say, I like him for a certain thing or her for a certain thing. I take some of that, or as a mentor, coach, whatever you might soundboard, whatever you call it.
yeah, I have a very different way of learning. I
Right.
think it's less talk about learning rather than sort of leaders. So I tend to learn by a very simple process, which is actually go out and listen and talk to people.
Right.
And one of the things I do, doesn't matter who they are, I'm always looking out for what people are saying and why they are saying. And I've taken some of my greatest learnings from just listening to even ordinary people and just basically learning principles from them. So, as an example, one of the great founding principles of my success has been to pay people on time. And whenever I think about this particular person, and I believe in situational leadership. What that means is that everybody is a leader in a particular situation. So the sort of leaders that I tend to follow are for a situation. So in a particular situation like this one, when at the height of some of my earlier failures, I was in discussion with he was an entrepreneur, a relative entrepreneur, and I was just talking about payment to suppliers and cash flows. And he said one thing to me then, and stuck me. He said, pay all your people on time, even your suppliers, because most of your regular suppliers you're buying regularly from. So he said, and his example was an electricity guys. He said our tendency sometimes as entrepreneurs is to use the money of our suppliers and not pay them on time. But he said, take an electricity supplier. He said he supplies you and bills you every quarter. He said the tendency would be let's not pay them on 30 days, but let's pay them every 90 days. So he said you gain a one-time advantage because the first bill that comes in, which you have to pay in 30 days, you pay 90 days. But he says the following, by the time 90 days you pay the first bill, the second bills come, which you will also end up paying 90 days later. And he'll say you will get yourself a perpetual bad name in the world by saying that you are a late payer. But if you plan properly and just do it one time borrowing or one time sorting out your finances, then you will always pay your suppliers on time. And he said, in the best of your times, these people will come to your rescue because there will be very few people like you who pay people on time. Now, so I have tended to learn by listening to people's individual examples at individual levels, small people, and sometimes even big guys, and just applying those two principles to my life. So not one particular leader or one particular person for inspiration. I just listen to ordinary people mostly and learn from them.
No, it's a very different one, but what I was trying to say is there are some great leaders out there, like like the Richard Bransons, dare I say, then in the sporting world, like Tiger Woods, I mean, Mahatma Gandhi coming back to our Indian thing, or people like that, and Mandela's, some big guys. Do you do
No,
you say what are their good qualities that are like, or something they've said or done? Do you ever pay attention to it, or do you just
no, I pay attention. So if it's so, what I'm saying is not a particular leader that I follow, but if I learn something from a particular leader, then I implement that.
okay?
So, and there may be any type of a leader, from a business leader to, from great leaders, I have a lot of time and respect for Gandhi, for example.
Absolutely.
Uh, and that's because I like the principles of how you can, and the greatest inspiration I take from Gandhi is not about independence or none of that, but actually about how you can just do something very simple and great results. And so
Absolutely.
this is one of the philosophies that I apply in my marketing is to just do something smart and achieve some great results. You don't have to spend. So currently with the new business that I've got launching, I'm employing agencies to work with me, and I'm saying I don't want any agency that wants to spend tons of money. I want an agency that tells me how not to spend the money to get the voice that I'm looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the world can be done like that now with the social media and everything else and the networks people have.
Yeah,
But it's a very good view that you have. What you are saying is, I don't follow one or two people. I follow and listen to almost anything that comes to me and then take it into my own compartment and address it accordingly. Correct?
correct. Yeah.
So that's a good philosophy to have as well. And I'm pretty similar, as you know, as well. From bellboys or servants all the way to the top, because everyone has a voice, and we both are quite similar. We believe that everyone has a skill and a talent and something they can add value to. What do
Correct.
you think? What do you think? What do you think is, in your view, the one thing that you would say that if I'd learned this earlier on in my life, I would be at another level. Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I think
One thing that if I had it earlier on in my life, I would have been at another level.
I'm not sure that's what I see, but what I do see is that some of the failures at Goldfield that I have had, if I had learned um, how to have read the motivational changes of a team, because as we succeeded, the team that was highly motivated started to become not demotivated, but less motivated to achieve. And if I had learned to do one of two things, or both, which is to identify those uh, things a little bit early, that people, everybody has a cycle of motivation and they move up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs a little bit differently,
Yes.
and being able to detect that and either find ways to remotivate them or replace them, then I think I would have learned. So I think the answer to that is that it's like in a sporting team. Great players will eventually stop being great. They will always be great, but they will stop performing for today. And your ability to understand, detect, and deal with that earlier on, I think, is a critical factor. So if I had learned that, I think I would be experiencing slightly different type of success.
No, yeah, I agree. It's a lesson I learned as well when I was in the corporate world, which was very, very useful. Let's get a little bit down to some
Okay.
what I would call the lighter side of things. How do you balance your work life balance? And I know you've got a health and wellness spa in Goa, which I remember it and was a turning point for me. So thank you very much for that. It really was a major turning point for me. So how do you balance your that work life as well as a typical day in your life? How would that look like?
That's an interesting question. Right, I have to stop Muru. I just realized it's actually 4:30, and I'm supposed to be in Croydon for 5 o'clock meeting.
Oh shit! All
I,
right.
so, if it's okay with you, should we continue? Just pause on that particular. I have no idea. No
We'll
problem.
reconvene at another stage, part two. Okay?
Yeah, next week or something we'll
Yeah.
reconvene. Yeah, let's do
Perfect.
that. Yeah. All
Perfect.
right.
Last two questions left anyway, so perfect.
Yeah. And then so we'll just remember that question. We'll turn on that. It's an interesting question, like balance.
Okay,
Uh,
perfect.
I don't know the answer, but I have a philosophy.
You're gonna go away, have a little think, and come up with a gem. Thank you.
No, no,
Just
no. I have a view on that, but
yeah, yeah.
it's a very much a view about everybody's life balance is completely different, But I will discuss that with you next time. All right,
Done. Done.
all
Catch you
right.
later.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you very much.